Hello Bots and Bits fans, today we are taking a very close look at the knockoff Takara Tomy boxed MP13 Soundwave and Laserbeak. Now this is the first of 3 MP13 knockoffs that are coming out this year. The second is the Toyhouse Factory MP13, aka Kubin Bao, which comes with all 6 tapes, including Ratbat, and I believe that released last week. I should have mine just after Easter, so I'll do a comparison review then. And then the third is the Robot Heroes version, which I believe is releasing early June, but that's subject to change. And that comes with 5 Takara tapes and a KO Auto Scout. Now, I don't know which version Auto Scout they're doing. It might be iGear or one of the others, but they're all basically the same anyway. Alright, so let's get into some of the details now. As you can see, it comes in a Takara Tomy branded box, but when comparing it with the official, there are some very clear differences. For starters, the official has a white glow that goes all the way around the figure and Laserbeak, but not the cassette player. The KO, however, has almost no glow whatsoever. There's nothing along here, but here there's very, very faint glow. All of the text is exactly the same as the official, and the details on the back are exactly the same as well, except like with the front, there is no yellow glow around the figure or Laserbeak compared to the official. Also, the colours of Soundwave himself are a much more deeper, darker blue than the official, and you can see Buzzsaw in the chest here. They've made him black and white instead of yellow like on Takara. And the details on the bottom of the box are a little bit different. You can see on the Takara, the batch number stamped in has created an indentation in the cardboard, whereas on the KO, the H3013, it's still very flat. It looks cut in with a knife. Soundwave comes in the regular Takara clamshell, although mine got pretty smushed on the way here. Someone clearly had a game of football with it. Some of the accessories are sticky taped down, but not all of them, so there was a lot of loose pieces when I got it. And also the sticky tape took off a little bit of silver paint from Laserbeak when I first removed it, so it's a bit thin, just be aware of that. So in the box we do get all the regular Takara accessories, starting off with this silver hand sensor. Now I can't remember what episode this was in, or exactly what the purpose of it was, but I do remember how to fit it on. So, fold the wrists in, and it does sit very snugly in those tabs. Also, he comes with his extra battery. Now this in particular is made quite well. The handle is pretty stiff to get out. There we go. And the red paint done around the lip here, while a little bit thin, is 100% in the lines. There's no overspray at all, nothing. And the plastic on this is actually quite neat. Also, the chrome is done particularly well. It looks a little bit thick, and I can see a couple of mold injection points there, but there is no dirt, there is no scratching, there is no hairs, there's no nothing. It's all very, very clean. And for those of you concerned that the Tanaka style hands won't be able to hold the weapon, I can say that it works okay. The tab isn't the tightest, and the fingers aren't very stiff either. So most of the support actually comes from this hinged thumb here. If we put it down like that, see, it's not flopping out doing this, but it doesn't take much for it to come loose. We also get his Megatron gun, which thanks to Yes Model I now have 300 of. And he holds it okay-ish, I guess. You'll find that most of the support comes from the hinged thumb, so if we collapse the pistol grip a little bit, wrap the fingers around it, and bring the thumb down, and then put the grip back up a bit, you can see that he holds it fine, and he's not dropping it. It's not the most secure, but it is in there. He also comes with his grid attachment, which goes on tight, as you would expect. He also comes with his Energon cube, which does come apart and attaches to his chest very stiffly and securely. And finally, Laserbeak and his cassette case, but I can't get him in there because he has some tolerance issues when transformed in this mode. You can see things don't quite line up properly, and no matter what I do or how I manipulate these hinges, I just can't get them to sit flush on either side, and these feet are a big problem, and the whole thing's got a bit of a bend to it, so he doesn't want to go in there. Thankfully though, he does fit inside of Soundwave's chest just fine. Now another problem with Laserbeak is the paint on this is really, really shitty. You can see some of it come off with the sticky tape when I removed it from the box. There's a lot of overspray around the edges here, and this is all very thinly applied. There's a lot of mold lines and chips and paint And you can see it's very fuzzy and poorly applied here, and the red isn't quite lined up there. Now that's not saying that the Takara is perfect, but I have to say the Takara is substantially better. So as you can see, the silver on the Takara is just applied so much better, and so is the blood red colour, which is 100% within the lines, as opposed to the KO, where it's all just a little bit fuzzy. Underneath it gets a bit different though. While Takara is very neat along here with their silvers, I do have a massive splash of silver up the side there, and the KO has a few chips where it rubs on Laserbeak's body. And also the red here is very fuzzy and out of the lines like the rest of it. And when it comes to the Decepticon logos, they've done a pretty good job. The KO logos look almost identical. Transformation is still the same, and while I don't feel like I'm going to break any of the bits, they're all pretty stiff and secure. I do feel like I'm taking a layer of paint off every time I manipulate this guy. So there he is, and Laserbeak does look pretty good. I mean, the paint in his eyes could have done with another coat. It's not all that vibrant at all. But in regards to plastic quality and joint strength, I think he's pretty much on par with Takara. It's just lots and lots of paint errors. So if you're okay with that, then you'll be okay with this. Now something weird to note is they must have done something with the spacing of these shoulder tabs, because I can't for the life of me get Laserbeak to sit on there. These slots just will not go in at all on either side. And I can't even get the Takara one on there either. So that's what makes me think it's the shoulder. However, he does sit on the wrist just fine, but only this one, because this side is missing the clear attachment. And it wasn't in the box or anything, so it's gone. But for the sake of argument, see, he doesn't sit on there particularly well. There we go. And you can see here that both the KO and the Takara Laserbeak sit on the Takara shoulders just fine. So despite looking very similar, the actual plastic colour and paint quality are very different. Taking a closer look, we can see some of the colour differences here. The KO has a much darker blue than the Takara, and also you can see the silvers on the arms. Takara's is much more whiter and milkier looking, whereas the KO is a lot more reflective. But the Takara has a very even coat all the way around. I don't have a single silver blemish or scratch or smudge or anything. But when we look up close to the KO, we start to see a lot of paint errors right here. This panel's not too bad. It's a little bit powdery, the silver, but this side's missing quite a bit. And it's even more on the inside of the elbow here. I'm not sure if you can see that. And scratches up the side. And also getting a close look at his face, we can see that they've applied a little bit too much silver paint inside this triangle on his forehead. And the paint on the mouth and these little vent bits on the side of his face are a bit chipped and a little bit sloppy. And you can see I've got more paint errors. And while we're up close, I'll also note that the Decepticon logo is missing the hole in the forehead. And you can see that the gold around his cassette holder is really, really sloppy. And also, while up close, the chrome, while applied pretty well, just got some fingerprints on there. They've applied it really thick, so you can see how it's filling in some of the detail on the word play. Whereas with the Takara, you can see that the details are all very sharp, apart from some fingerprints. And also the yellow on the cassette holder on Takara, look at that, that edge is just flawless. That is just perfect all the way around. Looking at the paint on the KO's legs, we can see that it is still pretty consistent with how they've done the rest of it. It's still powdery. I've still got blemishes in there. Up here I've got scratches and a bit of dirt underneath the paint. Got some pretty nasty sprue marks on the side where they've lost the paint. But on the plus side, we can see that the yellow gold paint underneath his kneecap is very neat and pretty well applied. Same with the yellow on the sides of his legs. This blue section is done pretty well. The paint is a little bit thin, and you can see the silver base coat coming through underneath the blue. And then we can see how thin the paint was applied here, because you can see how spotty it is. That's not enough pigment and possibly sprayed too close to the source. Same with this section here, which doesn't seem to want to sit in correctly. That one plastic panel. The other side's fine. But again, having said that, the Takara isn't perfect either. Looking on the legs, I do have sprue marks interrupting the paint, and I've also got a large amount of silver paint on the kneecap here. I've also got blue from the shins into the silver, and plenty of silver base coat coming up through the blue. So in a rare move for a straight Takara Tomy knockoff, they've gone and tried to make a lot of improvements to it, but they've taken it a little bit overboard. Now before I get into the knockoff, I'm just going to point out a couple of things with the Takara. One, the Takara only has 2 ratchets, and that's the hips forward and neutral, and the knee. This outer hip ratchet is just a very stiff friction joint, and the same with the transformation in the knee. So what the KO company has gone and done is add a ratchet to every joint they physically could, and this even includes a double ratchet in the shoulder. This section here has its own ratchet, right? And then this section here has a separate ratchet. And there you can see the ratchet teeth inside. Plus they've added a forward and back ratchet, and they've also added an upper bicep swivel ratchet, which is just much stronger than anything else going on here. There's also a hip swivel ratchet. There's the standard forward and neutral ratchet, which are very, very strong. And then they've also ratcheted this outward hip, but not very well. The problem is the ratchet teeth are just really inconsistent. On this side, I get one click there, second click there, and that's it. But on the other leg, I get 1, 2, 3, 4. Which is a really good range. Now there have been some reports on the Chinese message boards of the ratchet teeth actually coming undone. You have to unscrew the ratchet, realign it, put it all back together, and they should be fine. I'm sure that's what's happened here, to go from 4 clicks to 2 clicks. But anyway, there is also an upper thigh rotation ratchet. There is also a ratchet at the knee, which doesn't exactly line up with the knee, so you never get your legs perfectly straight. So if we look at the knee position now, you can see that it's slightly pointing this way, and the next click is slightly pointing inwards. There is no neutral flat position. See, go to the next one. And it's the same on this side as well. But it does go all the way around. So because there is no play or stiffness or friction joints in between the ratchet clicks, you're permanently with your legs like that, both facing slightly outwards or both facing slightly inwards. That's if you want these completely flush, but they don't go completely flush. As you can see, this one is facing a little bit that way, and this one is facing a little bit this way, both in the same direction at least, and then the next click is there, like that. So they haven't executed this particularly well. Okay, so down further we still get the knee ratchet, which is very, very strong. I'm really impressed with the strength. But also, oddly, they've ratcheted this hinge. Not the foot itself. The foot itself is still a friction, but this part here is on a ratchet. Now you've probably noticed while I've been manipulating all these ratchets that their hips are a little bit on the floppy side, and it's not so much floppy, more springy. You see, this assembly here is connected to the hips by a very thin joint, and the ratchet teeth are just stronger than the plastic they're using. So when using the ratchet, it's actually bending the plastic in here. And because the ratchet teeth aren't close enough together and they're not strong enough, you get like a springiness. It's not quite floppy, it wants to bounce. Bounce. Bounce, bounce, bounce. It really, really wants to bounce. And forward and back isn't much better either. See, the knees aren't moving, nothing else is moving, it is just this assembly at the top. And there's no play inside this section of the hips, it's all this connector up the top. They really should have just stuck with Takara, who are using stiff friction joints in the upper hips. See, now that's not, entirely perfect, but it is substantially better than the KO. And also, I've just noticed on the KO, the hip ratchet bit is providing a lot of flex. And doing that, see? Compared to Takara. Not that you'd be doing this all that often, but still worth noting. Now, something else the KO company has tried to improve on and maybe created a bit of a situation for some is the tab inside the shoulder here. Now on Takara, it holds pretty well. I don't think I've ever heard anyone really complain about it. It's not the tightest, right? But when you're manipulating the arm, it doesn't really come undone. Well, I don't think it does. On the KO, they've substantially increased the size of the peg. And the first time I transformed this, I actually stressed the plastic inside the ratchet here. I don't know if you can see that or not. Between the grey and the blue. No, not really. But it is there. And the reason why that happened was because I grabbed the arm wrong, not realizing how strong that tab really is. So when I first did this, I grabbed an old dentistry tool and used it to just pry this panel open. But now that I've done it a few times, the plastic has started to loosen up a bit. As you can see, the plastic is shredded just a little bit, as each time I do it, it takes a little bit more off. But it still holds incredibly tightly. And the same on the other side. Transformation is still exactly the same, so I'm going to skip it. There he is in Walkman mode, and he looks pretty good. The colours all match up, as you would expect with Takara, and he holds together really, really well. The tabs for these arms in the back aren't the greatest. They just come straight out. This one here, no matter how hard you force it in, it still just comes straight out, but it won't flop out. Something to note during transformation, though, was these hip ratchets. Again, you can see that the thighs don't quite line up straight, and it was a little bit difficult to force all that in together to get this a perfectly straight line. But now that I have, it looks the part. And I think this is why a lot of people want this cheap KO. I've been reading a lot of comments and hearing from a lot of people that they wanted a cheap way to display Soundwave as bot and Walkman. So this is a good way to display them with your Takara. And I think that looks pretty good. Once I'm done with this review, this is how I'll be displaying it on my shelf. Now, a problem has arisen with Laserbeak. As I mentioned before, he doesn't quite transform properly, but also I'm getting a breakage in the ankle here. Transform the leg a little bit, you can see that it is on an angle, and the pin, where is it, is really exposed in there. This foot is going to come off any moment. See, look. So that's no good. Because it doesn't transform properly, it still fits in here, but it is really, really snug, see? He's not coming out. And while it will close, it will no longer open. So I've got to push the button and pull it out. Now, it is Laserbeak causing the issue, because if I bring in Takara Buzzsaw, he slots in there really, really easily and closes and opens. So after all that, is it actually worth buying? Well, for me, this cost about $75 Australian delivered, so that is super cheap. But I'll only be displaying him in Walkman mode, as I already have Takara. If this is going to be your first and only Soundwave, I'd highly recommend waiting for Toyhouse Factory reviews to come out. This will be soon. Or spending your time saving your pennies and trying to find an official Takara, because the Takara so far is the superior. The KOs are the inferiors. Unfortunately, this time it is not a case of the Takara Tomy KO boxes being of equal quality or just slightly under. It is substantially less quality than Takara. But again, like I said, $75 Australian delivered, maybe a little bit more if you go through a retail store. I got this off Teo Bayo, so it was quite cheap. I highly recommend waiting till around the June mark when Robot Heroes is released. They've got a whole line of Decepticon tapes coming out, so they are taking Soundwave really seriously. So I have very high hopes for the product that they're going to put out. So this will be around for a while. Toyhouse Factory will be around for a while. If you can find the official, grab it. It's worth it. As always, leave your comments, questions, love and corrections down below. Remember to like and subscribe if you enjoyed my video. Check out our Facebook for daily KO and third-party news and updates. And thank you guys very much for watching.